Paul asks him, give me the best miracle. Give me your best example.
But the opposite side of that is our intuition isn't always that great. It's just confirmation bias as well.
Or it's confirmation bias.
Zac Efron.
No.
Zac and me.
The shaken fist.
And Mike!
Beverly.
But what I am saying is that I heard a voice, I did something, I had no way of particularly knowing this.
She had even taken a video of the candle being lit one morning, and it seemed all pretty legit.
If you're just refusing these things, I can't believe in miracles. I can't believe in that.
Here's one I'll give you, Paul, and you're probably gonna hate this one. But I'm gonna give you one of my own.
Now you can take that for whatever it's worth, but I believe that what we did is assist George in getting his eternal reward and finishing his purgation.
But I can believe in the future progress of technology. You need to know that you got some skin in the game, and it doesn't really have anything to do with logic. It has to do with personal choice.
This is not a miracle in the sense of like a limb grew out or something like that. Okay, this is not I don't know how evidentially compelling it would be, but because it's myself, I feel like I can speak better from experience than anything else. And so about several years ago, while I was still dating my wife,
it's not always a ghost or a purgatorial soul like in the story of George. It could be something nefarious, and so we have to be very careful and allow the church to intervene in these situations.
I have a question for atheists. Do you believe that you will ever one day be able to sit down at your computer and touch an app that opens up a portal so that you can send a package to Nebraska?
And it's my job to be a skeptic, so I was looking for every possible option besides this being an actual haunting.
And I narrowly missed that particular car. Now, unfortunately, and this brings up the problem of evil and all kinds of other things, is somebody else hit the back of that car going full speed. Now, I'm not going to try and explain theologically why me and not those people, okay? Why doesn't God perform many, many, many more miracles and save people from all kinds of pain and heartache and things? Why didn't he perform a miracle just recently with those kids at the school, right?
Do you think that in the near future, we might actually be able to like 3D print human organs? Do you think that we might be able to, after a burn victim comes out of a fire, might be able to print organic tissue back upon their body, reestablish their veins and capillaries, etc.?
So I started to ask her a little bit more about George. I said, was George a good man? And she said, well, George was rough, but he was very good to me. And when he got sick, he was on his deathbed. One of the last things he said to me was, I feel so sorry that I wasn't at Mass with you all of those years. If I had to do it over, I would have been with you every single Sunday. And the priest came and George received last rites and he was received back into the loving arms of Christ. And I said, do you think George might be in purgatory? And she said, oh yes, just like that. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but it kind of seems like maybe God is allowing George to ask us to assist him in purgatory. So I said, what if I call my friends, they're these monks, and we'll have a week's worth of masses said for George's soul. For a week, that candle continued to be lit, all 7 days. And after the 7th day, she woke up on the 8th day, she came down, and the candle wasn't lit anymore.
If you could possibly imagine a reality where we're living like the elves, let's say in the Lord of the Rings, and we have this pristine elegance to us, and we have the capacities to do amazing things, and maybe all of our technology is hidden, and maybe it looks like magic to others. If you can figure that we could ever do that with science and technology, if you can imagine that, but can't imagine God stepping across space and time and stepping into history 2,000 years ago as the God-man, Jesus Christ. If you can't imagine that and imagine him going around and doing actual miracles, maybe by means and methods we don't currently understand, then maybe we are just showing selective bias. Maybe it's not about possibility and potential. Maybe it's just about, I don't like the parameters that he set out. I don't like his terms and conditions. I don't really like the idea of somebody else being master and lord over me.
And I could not see very particularly well at all. In the sense that like there was like a hill on the highway coming up, and it just visibility wasn't super great, but I wasn't really thinking anything of it. I was just driving on the highway, and there was a car stalled out in front of me, some, I don't know how many feet ahead, but all of a sudden on the inside of me, I heard like a voice say, "Get in the other lane." And so what I did is without thinking about it, and I was in the context of this was I was praying on my way because I was in the car by myself, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to question this. I'm going to get in the other lane. And there was a car stalled out. I didn't see it, with people outside trying to work on said car.
And that being the case, you might want to consider that you are not really on good grounds for refusing this other than just saying, I don't like it. I just don't like it. And that's not a good reason to not accept anything.
So not a good reason. So the reason you don't accept all this amazing evidence, Zach, is because you're pissed off at God and you're mad and you're angry and you don't want a ruler in your life.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Well, it's always the way, isn't it? I suppose we're just angry atheists. That's all it is. I'm just a misotheist. I'm not really an atheist. You know what I mean? But like, do you know what I noticed? Sorry, go on.
Why are you so angry? Why are you so angry? The evidence is so apparent. God spoke to Eric while he was driving, get in the other lane, and it saved his life. But he admits the people that were on the road still all got hurt. Like so here's his scenario. He's driving and praying, and God says, "Get in the other lane," in his mind. So he switches lanes, and the car behind him plows into the people. So God didn't save the people that were broke down. God didn't save the people in the other car. But God saved Eric. And then he says, and I don't understand. I don't understand why, and I know he says the problem of pain here, God could have saved all those kids. So when he recorded this was right around the time of a school shooting. And he's like, well, I don't know why God didn't save those kids. And I don't know why God didn't save the people that were broken down on the road or the guy that plowed into them behind me. But I know he saved me. I know he saved me. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. Let's trolley problem this out. If God showed up to you right now and said, Zach, I can save your life right now, or I'm going to put a bullet in your head. Your choice. If you take the bullet, I'm not going to blow up. I'm going to stop some terrorists that are about to kill 1,000 little kids. Like, I don't know. If it was me, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if it was me, I'd probably say, you know what? I'll take the bullet for the 1,000 kids. And would you? How would you deal with that trolley problem?
It depends on how I feel on the day.
Fair enough.
I'm not a big fan of children, so if I'm in a particularly good mood, then fuck them.
Let me rephrase the trolley problem. What if it was a bunch of people that you actually cared about and your dog?
Well, if it was a bunch of dogs are involved, well then
then it's another story, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome everybody to our recording. This is Michael Beverly. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Zach's channel. We'll put this on both channels. How the hell are you doing today, Zach?
Well, right now I'm extremely frustrated because I've been dealing with stuff. But hey, it's cool. I'm in pain,
did you try praying? Did you try praying? Did you try praying?
I've tried. I have, and do you know what? It didn't work.
But what about the divine plan? Gave it a lot of thought, decided it was a good plan, put it into practice. And for billions and billions of years, the divine plan has been doing just fine. Now you come along and pray for something. Well, suppose the thing you want isn't in God's divine plan. What do you want him to do? Change his plan? What's the use of being God if every rundown schmuck with a $2 prayer book can come along and fuck up your plan?
It didn't work.
No.
So what do you think about this guy who says, but I'm a skeptic, but boy, the video of that candle turning on every day was that was compelling. And this woman's not known to be crazy. And she just
sounded sane. She sounded sane to him. You know what I mean?
Sane to him.
No one's smegging nuts.
Well, that's good. Is something amiss?
Amiss? God, no. What could possibly be amiss?
You don't think there's anything amiss? I'm sitting here wearing a red and white checked gingham dress and army boots. You think that's unamiss?
No, of course not. We were trying to humor you.
I was just doing a little test. A little test to see if you'd gone crazy.
You know,
and she just lost. She just lost her husband.
Like, you know, and he went, "She's normal, but there's nothing wrong."
Yeah, right, exactly. And he did verify nobody was playing a prank on her because he asked her, and she said, "No, nobody's playing a prank." The candle's really lighting by itself, and it must be George. And then he asked her, well, was George a nice guy? And she's like, well, he was a little rough. He might be in purgatory.
Well, he was a fire starter, so that's how they know that it's him, because he liked to light fires, and the thing keeps on coming back. So maybe he was Jewish. It's like the menorah.
It just the supernatural
the oil
thing
just never runs out.
All right, so the theme on these clips. So we got one guy who's saying you atheists don't believe because whatever agenda, you don't want a ruler, but you can see that computers do stuff. And he's using a clever trick. I'll give him credit for this. He's basically saying you want to give him any credit? Well, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit for using something it's reasonably clever. He's basically saying any technology that's super advanced, Isaac Asimov, appears to be magic to those. And he's basically saying if you can accept that technology gives us stuff that appears magical, you and I are talking now in a way that would seem magical to somebody 1,000 years ago. So what he's saying is, can't you then accept that, Jesus could have showed up and healed the blind?
There's two problems with that. One is we could explain how we do this, and we could show them with materials from back then how to do this sort of thing that we could do, and we could explain it properly, and it wouldn't be all magical. It'd just be like, here's how we do stuff, right?
Go ahead, finish.
Two, one of the things he says that's so super futuristic, we can already do. He's like, could you imagine imagine a world where we could print organs? And it's like, actually, right. we do that a lot, actually. We do that a fair amount with
there's no doubt
success.
Technology is doing some amazing stuff here, but I want to push back on your first statement. Mm-hmm. So Eliezer Yudkowsky, the guy that had the front page at the time about AI doomer, he's a pretty brilliant guy. And in one of his essays, he says, look, if I was able to go back in a time machine to the Middle Ages with the instructions to how to build an air conditioner or like a refrigeration, mm-hmm. they still wouldn't get it. Even if he could, they didn't have the ability to they still wouldn't be able to understand it. And I think his point, and I may be getting it wrong here, but I think his point is if you don't have the underlying understanding of the technologies in the base, then
I think that's just fundamentally untrue.
Well, if we got a time machine, we could.
No. It has to be fundamentally untrue because we do it every day. Every time a child is born, they know nothing, and we teach them everything we know from the ground up. So if we went back in time with instructions and the materials and didn't just go, hey, by the way, you have to make like a steel foundry and you have to make these chemicals and shit.
Yeah,
but if you went back with the stuff with instructions and went, if you put this together, it'll keep the room cold, people would be like, oh, sweet. And they'd do it.
Now, but that's the difference. If you demonstrate the process, that's different than just showing them the plans of how it would work on paper.
No, because people built stuff like that all the time. They weren't building, what's it called? Fucking
airplanes?
God. No,
air conditioning.
Air conditioners.
Yeah,
God. Air conditioners. But you do forget that the early, like the early to Middle Kingdom Egyptians had steam engines and hydraulics, right?
Yes, but those technologies built on.
Right, but the thing is
they built on a foundation.
If we're giving them instructions on how to do it, people weren't that dumb; they wouldn't be able to figure stuff out.
Yeah, but you're changing the question. It's not about not being smart enough to figure it out. If you can explain it all in the underlying technologies, the point is if you went back with the instructions for air conditioning and you gave it to even the smartest guy and you said, here's the instructions on it, he's not going to understand all of the heat transfer and the mechanics and the molecules. You'd have to start. Now, you're using your child example. Yes, if you explain to him like a child and started with elementary physics and chemistry and science, and you slowly built it up. Yeah, eventually you would get to the point where he would understand it. But the point is, if you sat down and said, hey, I can make this machine that uses electricity and it's going to cause heat transfer through this coil and stuff, you'd be talking over his head. He wouldn't understand until he understood the foundations of what you were talking about. That's the point.
Right, but the difference is the guy in the video is trying to compare technology to God because God's unknowable, and you're supposed to not know how these technologies could possibly
No,
work.
understood. What he was saying though, what he's saying is if Jesus showed up and he knew some magical words that worked in physics, like let's say that there was a magic word abracadabra that actually made you know, a pint of Guinness beer show up. If that rule was built into the universe and we hadn't discovered it yet, and then we said abracadabra Guinness beer and it popped into place, we would think at first maybe that's a miracle. Now, you and I as scientists would say if that actually happened, it would mean there was some physics and science that we just didn't understand.
True, but the best Jesus did was like, you know, what, he killed the blind guy, he brought a guy back from the dead, and he turned some water into wine.
Yeah, no,
and he bread and fish.
Yeah, he didn't do none of that stuff anyways.
I don't know. I just don't. I don't think there's any way that it would matter, to be honest, because like people would be able to tell. Like people were dumb because they didn't have a foundational thing, but they were still basically us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think people in the Middle Ages or in the time of Jesus were dumb. I think they were brilliantly smart, the same as us, on a bell curve, the same as us. You know, some people are kind of dumb and some people are kind of smart, but they didn't have the underlying foundation that a high schooler in any reasonably decent high school in the world, they don't have that knowledge. So without being able to build up from the underlying foundations of, say, Newtonian and you know, chemistry and et cetera, and basic math.
That's why he wants you to get down to that level, though, because that's where ambiguity lies. And if you can get down to that, well, then God can fit in all the little places that you can't explain, because it's all about, well, what if you can think about it scientifically, and you know, then why can't you think about it in a God way? Why couldn't God be able to know this stuff back then? It's like you can't even say that God did any of that back then anyway. You know what I mean? And
no, of course, it's conjecture. So the Christians want us to believe that because Jesus is God and God can do anything, that we should accept that Jesus did these miracles. And the logic works. Yes, if there's a supernatural creator God, or even if we lived in a construct and there's a programmer that can, like the Matrix, could reprogram stuff. Yeah, okay. Then you could heal the blind guy because there's just a computer code or some code behind it, et cetera, et cetera. But let's bring this discussion back to the topic at hand here. What is bizarre to me is they want us to believe these miracles. And so in that clip from Eric being on with Paul Logia, Paul asks him, give me the best miracle. Give me your best example. And he started to say there's a woman with MS who got healed supposedly, and Paul's girlfriend has MS. So he said she studied that and makes her pissed off. And then Eric's kind of like, okay, that's a bad example. Let's move on to something else. Oh, you're not going to like this miracle because it happened to me. It's my personal experience. I was driving my car, and then he tells the story. Now I streamed with Eric about miracles, and we had the same kind of discussion. And his best example then was this guy that had part of his intestines to grow back. Now, here's the thing. So Eric admits that most stories of miracles aren't true. They're fake. And he has a criteria for miracles. And his criteria, when he described his criteria, he says, yeah, it kind of sounds like the Catholic criteria, right? They have a strict, you know, you got to prove it to a priest and blah, 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 so many witnesses and et cetera, et cetera. And using his criteria, his strongest miracle, the guy whose intestines grew back, doesn't qualify because one of his qualifiers is it happens instantaneous. Like, in other words, if God miraculously heals somebody, they're healed. Bam, they're healed. Yeah. This guy who this car fell on his stomach, had to go to the ER, had to be intravenously fed to be kept alive. He almost died, and it was a long process of healing and recovery. Now, Eric's claim, well, the intestine grew back. Now, of course, nobody can prove this. You can't, I asked him, well, if the intestine really go back, there should be like a medically peer-reviewed paper. There should be, we should be able to all agree that it grew back, but that's not the case. Well, that's his best miracle, that, and God told him to change lanes. Now,
yeah, but it's like I was saying about ambiguity. That's why they need that ambiguity in you, because you need some space for, well, why not? Why couldn't it be this? And you can even tell by the way, like when they argue with you, it always eventually comes down to Pascal's wager. Well, why not? Right? Because it's all about, they say that's all we do is we create doubt, because we're like, oh, well, actually, if you look at this text, it says this, and if you look at this bit of science, it says that this bit of the Bible's wrong and all this stuff. And that they say all we do is make doubt, but that's all they do. That's the whole point, is going, you can't explain it, right? You don't know what abiogenesis is. You can't explain this scientific process. You can't explain creation. Or like, you can't explain that noise. Why is that candle coming back? Why did the voice in my head tell me to turn the car? It must be God, right? You can't explain it. It's just creating what they think is like a reasonable level of doubt to make you believe the next sentence or the next sentence after that, because that's really the bits that are important. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just about nailing home the selling of, look at the magical thing. Look at it's magical, right? You can't explain it.
The God excuse, the last refuge of a man with no answers and no argument. It came from God. Anything we can't describe must have come from God.
Yeah, you can't explain this insanely unexplainable thing that God told him to change lanes in his car. Now, so the interesting thing here is, I've read a couple books that kind of speak to this. One is called The Gift of Fear, and it's by a guy that talks about people. So one of his examples is he gives an example of a woman who was assaulted after she's walking home, and I think it was New York or somewhere. There's like a brownstone and steps up to her house.
Yeah.
She's carrying groceries, and an inner voice says to her, don't trust this guy. So she has the inner voice, don't trust this guy.
Yeah.
But she overrode her inner voice and invited him into the house to help her with the groceries. He pulls out a knife, sexually assaults her, and blah, blah, blah. And so his book is about trusting these premonitions, these inner voices. Now, he's not a spiritual guy, as far as I know. He's just saying, look, we've evolved with, the hair stands up on the back of our neck. We feel someone's watching us. We know there's a presence, or we feel some danger. And he's saying the gift of fear is this thing that tells us, and it's a survival mechanism. It's very easily explained through evolution, because our mind is constantly, our ears and our eyes and our senses are picking up vast amounts of information that we discard, because our brains wouldn't be able to, our RAM wouldn't be able to. I mean, right now I'm looking around my room. There's probably 2,000 objects easily, plus a couple dogs running around. If my brain had to stop and use the energy to categorize and notice and know everything about, well, that shirt over there is green and blue and it was made in Pakistan, and that shirt is red, it was made in China, and it has a Vans logo on it, and there's a piece of furniture, and there's a Chihuahua, and here's the history of Chihuahua. I mean, the number of, once you start expanding the information, it's infinite, right? So our brains developed ways to hide from us most of the data that it's perceptible to us for obvious reasons, right? Now, the second book that I read that speaks to this is Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, and the title Blink, it kind of has to do with the same idea. And he starts the book, I'll make this really fast. There's a museum, Getty in LA, and the Getty has a statue, and the offering price, or the asking price, is like $1 million or $2 million for the statue, yada, yada, yada. Here's the provenance. The seller says, you want to buy it. The Getty wants to buy it because if it turns out to be legit, it's a very nice piece. So they hire 3 experts. All 3 experts would later testify that their blink, their immediate inner voice, what spoke to them, told them it was a fraud, a forgery, that it was bad. but they all worked through the process of justifying to themselves that was legit. Well, for reason. Probably because the Getty really wanted it. It was a good deal. It was a rare piece. It was, blah, blah, blah. So all three of them wrote reports saying, yeah, we authenticate it. Later, it was proven beyond any doubt it was a forgery. And so the idea is what that Malcolm Gladwell brought up is these guys all knew for some reason that it was a fake. Mm-hmm. And then so the theory is, how would they know? Well, it might have been one of his examples was the hand. If you compare the carving of the way the hand was carved to pieces in that period, it didn't quite match. And Malcolm Gladwell theorizes, look, these guys were all expert in antiquities. Their mind instantly knew something was wrong, but they just couldn't put their finger on it. So,
yeah. So like your subconscious works out things incredibly fast. It works out because it can fire millions of neurons instantly, mm-hmm. and it. But the problem is we created a language, right? And mm-hmm. so with that language, we gave ourselves a conscious thought that we could think with and reason with. So like when our subconscious tells us to do stuff because it's instantly figured something out, and we don't act in an instinctual way very often anymore. So we try and reason things, and then we reason away from what our intuition does. But the opposite side of that is our intuition isn't always that great. It's just confirmation bias as well. So, the woman's going to remember the time that, the guy was being weird, but she went, do you know what? It'd be nothing, and it went horrifically wrong. But she won't remember the 50 times where she did have that feeling and went, no, and nothing happened because it's not as memorable. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So, like, there is that side of it as well, because it's one of the things, because, like, that starts coming into the realms of, like, psychological luck and how your brain.
Of course. And there's how many times did Eric change lanes and there was no accident? Or how many times but how many times in his life did something go wrong that God didn't warn him? Right. Obviously there's a time he stubbed his toe, right?
But when it comes to that thing, it's like, oh, how was I supposed to know to turn to the car? And it's like, did you hear the car revving behind you? Did you hear or see in a because like you're saying, there's so many stimuli that your ears and your eyes and all this, and your body picks up that your brain processes that you do not realize is being processed. And it gets either immediately processed or immediately ignored. And you can notice these things, and your brain will just be like, instinct, do this thing. And if you have a predilection for thinking that God is telling you what to do, well, then instinct then becomes God, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, of course. And in his story, he describes himself driving alone and praying because he was alone. He was going to visit his girlfriend, who's now his wife. So it's dusk. And he describes like driving over a hill or something, and he's praying. Now I can imagine right now the way we'd have described this as a naturalist, we would say his eyesight probably saw the car up in the head, but his brain was praying. He didn't process it. But just like how if you're sound asleep, you're sound asleep, but something happens. Like your name is called or a certain noise that's not normal, and you wake up immediately. Yeah. Other times the noises are normal to your life. You don't wake up. Yeah. This happened to me once. I went on a 3-week long line fishing trip with my dad, who was a professional fisherman and a captain. And he one night he went to bed and he said, hey, at 4 a.m. I need you to wake me up. That's that's your task. Okay, Dad, no problem. Our captain. No problem, Captain. So at 4 a.m. I went into his bunk. And the captain has his own stateroom, and the rest of us crew were, had crew quarters. Yeah. I get up and I walk into his room and I shake him on the shoulder, and my dad freaked out. He freaked. He jumped up in like a night terror, and he's like, he's like, God damn it. Don't ever do that again. Just open the door and say Captain, and I'll wake up instantly.
Yeah.
Right. So the point of that story is our brain is, even when we're asleep, our brain doesn't like turn off. Like I think the only time our brain is like pretty much like we're dead is if we get anesthesia. Okay, let me pause. Hold on a second here. Dogs. Fucking dogs. other than that, and of course we're not actually clinically, we're not dead when we are going under anesthesia, but our brain's pretty much out of it. But the rest of the time, our brain is processing things.
See, the thing is, there is another naturalistic explanation for what happened when he was in that car, assuming it happened. Also, it could just be a traumatic experience that his brain is rearranged into a more pleasing thing for him and created memories to make him feel that it happened thusly. Because he could have been praying at the time and he could have seen the car coming from behind or whatever and decided to get out of the way and then post-hocked it and made the memories. And not even in like a nefarious, I'm going to dig myself up way or I'm trying to prove God sort of way. In a, oh, those people over there just died in front of me and it was nearly me. My brain pieces it all together in a semi-PTSD sort of way.
Sure. And this is well documented that our brains remember things wrong and then reinforce the memory that we have that gets reinforced isn't always necessarily what happened.
And then, so like with the guy going on about the demons and the ghosts and the old lady and the rough guy, when you have people that then come in as some kind of like exorcist and go, well, these spirums or spittrils or whatever demons you want to call them, right? Then these people start feeling further off each other, feeding further off each other, because like one person's coming in and going, I'm the thing, and I'm going to get rid of the demon to do this and everything, and he's all up for it because he's done it before, and the woman's like, oh, my husband and all, and then when they start talking about it, oh yeah, there's this, and then they build off each other. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing builds, and they start matching each other. And like, not just, I don't mean like word for word, but for like energy and stuff like that.
Right.
And then until it gets to a certain way, it's like, look, this is definitely the way this happens. You know what I mean?
Well, also another thing is this guy's a professional and she's an old woman that just lost her husband. So she's in an emotional state. Yeah. He's a pro. And now I always tell this to Christians or religious people, go watch Darren Brown. Darren Brown explains Darren Brown has explained and demonstrates every one of these. So if Darren Brown had been in that situation, not only would he have explained what was lighting the candle, he could have explained to her, he could have communicated to her from George.
To be honest, I think I know what's lighting the candle.
What's that?
So I haven't seen the video, like, because he doesn't put the video of what happens in there or anything. But they go on about it happens at a certain time of the day, every day in the morning or something. Now, I wouldn't be surprised that, because they said it was, I'm sure they said it was near a window or something like that, right? And it's like, so when you get the sunlight coming in through a window, say if you've got like, because it's, it's older, it's an older generation, so you might have some crystal somewhere, something that might focus that light a little bit, and it always just goes in that one place where they've left the thing. And you don't want to move it because it's magical, right?
Oh yeah, so it's like a
so it's basically getting
a magnifying glass.
Time, as the thing goes up.
I mean, to me, that sounds pretty fantastical. I was just going to say she's just faking it, but I could buy that. Or I could also buy that. The point here is
that isn't that rare to happen. If you can, if you know where it's going to happen, it's easy to make happen. It's not that hard.
Well, and we know magnifying glasses work, and we know candles light when light is focused on a certain spot.
Yeah, especially if it's something that's already a bit warm.
And we also know that religious people tend to find the supernatural, but they disagree, which was going to be my other point here. Eric, who's a Pentecostal, isn't necessarily going to buy these Catholic miracles, nor is he necessarily going to buy this idea that George was in purgatory and that the prayers of monks got him out of purgatory.
Why?
Which to me seems obscene. It's like Mormons baptizing for the dead. If God is actually just and there's a system here, how could it possibly make sense that, let's say I die tomorrow and I've been a bad boy. So God sends a spirit to you, Zach, and says, I'm not letting Michael into heaven yet until you pray for 7 days, but then I'll let him in. Like, in what sense does that make sense? Injustice, or what was the point of Jesus dying on the cross, or blah, blah, blah. It's just ludicrous, right?
That does not make sense.
Well, because, no, see, that's the thing. It's just Catholics need people to suffer, so you need to find new ways for them to suffer. And part of that suffering entails being a monk and praying for people constantly so they don't.
7 days of prayer gets you out of purgatory.
There's always a little payment that needs to be done, and if whatever it needs to, whatever. Because that's the thing with these religions. It's always paying for later. It's always all the stuff now, and you get it after death, or people are already dead, and you need to help them in the afterlife. But
you need to baptize for the dead because otherwise they'll be stuck there and just stuck. Now, so riddle me this though. If I was Eric Manning, let's say I'm a Pentecostal, and I used to be a Pentecostal. I used to go to a Signs and Wonders church, the Vineyard Church. Yeah. And somebody said, put me on the spot. Like, what's the best miracle that you could tell me about? Yeah. I would be stuck. Like, I wouldn't know what to say. And I can't imagine myself saying, well, some years back I was driving in my car and I heard a voice and changed lanes and that avoided an accident, because that sounds cheesy and lame. And really, if that's your best miracle, that's your best example, then your God kind of sucks. Like,
it's like that JCO Journey we both spoke to, and his best example was
his best example, money. The coin.
Should I go to Florida? I don't want to go to Florida. Maybe I do. And then God made Dogecoin go up, so he should go. It's the thing. They don't care what it is. It just needs to seem tenuous at best for them, and because they want to believe it. They want half the job's already done. They want to believe that something miraculous will happen to them. So when somebody goes, hey, what has God done in your life? They can at least point to something. Because imagine, it was one of the problems I had. Imagine being a Christian, right? And you're in a prayer group, you're in Sunday school, or you're in some Bible study group or whatever. And all the Christians are going around talking to each other going, oh, God did this for me. God did this for me. And what have you got? What have you got if God hasn't done anything for you? Do you know what I mean? Then
you're the odd man out. Yeah. So it's real easy to want to come up with something.
It's not even just the odd man out. It then becomes, oh, well, God didn't do anything for you, did he? All right. Yeah. Why? What have you done?
Oh, what's your secret sin?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the story of Mark Twain? Samuel Clemens goes to this hypnotist in town, and he volunteers, and he gets hypnotized, and the guy's sticking him with a pin, and he consciously doesn't express any pain.
Yeah.
The hypnotist is, and then later he explains, listen, it hurt like hell, but I was pretending because I wanted to prove that you all would fall for this hokey stuff. And his own mother, if I'm remembering the story right, his own mother didn't believe him. His own mother says, I was there, you were hypnotized. And he's like, no, Mom, I was faking it because I wanted to make a point. So people, once they believe these things, even if they're told later it's fake, a fraud, they still will believe it. Yeah. And this is, again, why I really recommend watching Darren Brown's stuff, because he explains what he does. And he's very clear. He's like, I'm an atheist. I don't really talk to dead people, but I'm going to tell you stuff about your grandma that I couldn't know. And then he proceeds to say, your grandma's name was Elsie. And, I think she liked sitting on a rocking chair and drinking tea. She took tea with lemon. And the people are like, oh my gosh. And then he later explains to some degree, I mean, it's kind of a little bit over my head how he does these things. And if he wanted to be a con artist, he could be one of the world's greatest con artists.
No, I can tell you exactly how he does it. He reads your throat.
He can see.
So
when you're responding to stuff.
So when he's doing these things, he's not just going, you had this, you had this. He's asking you questions and saying, think about the answers. Think about them, right? Look them straight in the eyes and think about the answers, but don't say them, right? And you make these isometric movements in your throat and in your mouth, and he can see the starts of the speech that you want to start saying. And he
that's almost like, to me, that's almost like magic.
Well, so it's some of the stuff because I've studied a lot of the stuff he does. I've read a lot of his stuff, and now he does stuff.
Wow,
and
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's so mental.
Yeah, he's really brilliant. So when this other guy, the other clip, brings up the idea of computers and technology, and I thought it was kind of funny. You probably reflected on the same thing. It's like, wait a minute, the guy is using an example we can go and our garage and tinker with the with the mechanics. We can see the technology. We can reproduce it.
Yeah.
And he's thinking that's a good example.
Well, but to him, the Bible is the same thing. You can just go to your Bible and tinker around with that and see what's in there, because that stuff is recorded from the past and it's all true word. It's gospel, literally.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought he did himself a disservice by
he does in all of his videos.
Yeah, bringing up this point of technology as an example. Like, can't you atheists see computers and the amazing things we can do with 3D printing? Doesn't that prove to you Jesus could have, fed 5,000 people with 2 fish? Now, here's the thing. Even with technology and, say, 3D printing food, you probably will be able to 3D print sushi that is an amazing grade A sushi at some point. But it won't happen by magic. You'll still need the molecules and the material, right? Like, whatever chemicals make flesh of ahi have to be present for the 3D printer to do it. It doesn't come out of thin air.
No, when we print people's organs, we still need to grow their cells first from stem cells, and then we print them.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not magic. It's not coming. It's still, all this stuff follows the laws of physics and science, and chemistry is still chemistry at the end of the day. Even if some things seem magical, it's still chemistry.
Yeah.
It's still real stuff happening. So, all right, you and I made an agreement. We're going to keep this one short. Let's aim for it in the maybe the 45-minute range.
Yeah.
Because reason. Both of us are trying to make videos that are accessible to you all out there in video land. So leave us likes, subscribes, comments, all that stuff. Help our channels grow. Help us get the message out. And we're both open to, at least I am, I think you are too, we're open to constructive criticism and ideas and suggestions. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I thrive off constructive criticism. It's very rare.
Yeah, well, I mean, right. I mean, it doesn't help for somebody just to say, you guys all suck. But it does help when people say, if you did X, Y, and Z, like a technical thing. So anyways, anyways, I thought this was interesting. I thought the juxtaposition of those 3 different types of claims, but it makes a point. I think that it's obvious that, like, Eric Manning is reaching into he's really reaching to try to prove that's a miracle. I think the thing with the candle is obviously trickery or natural thing, but more importantly, it just proves the Catholic Church takes advantage of little old ladies who was grieving with her. The idea that this guy, they were going to pray to get her husband out of purgatory is complete BS. It's manipulative. It's cruel. And, I do think it's nice to be nice to old ladies. And if somebody's grieving and they get comfort from thinking that their dead loved one is in heaven and they're an old person, like, I wouldn't argue with them, let them believe that. But taking advantage of it and saying you can affect, if you do this, we can, come on, it's selling indulgences again. It's gross. And as far as using tech for proving Jesus miracles, here's a little hint to you. Apologies, I wouldn't go there.
No. Hey, because Lourdes has been the hub of Catholic miracles for 100 plus 200 years, and they still really don't have anything. People flock there and drink the miracle water every day in the thousands, and nothing. But hey.
There's always hope. Hope springs eternal. All right, man. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you today. We'll do this more often. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we can come up with little topics to comment on. Please give us some comments in the comments and subscribe, all that. Zach, thanks for joining me today. You have a good one. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody out there.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
Jesus, click the button.
Subscribers.
I've always wanted to do that.
Subscribers.